Welcome to The Explainer.
That's how the legendary critic Roger Ebert described the 1978 film Halloween. You see, he wasn't just watching a movie. He felt like he was living it. And he totally nailed what makes this film a true landmark.
So the big question is, how did a little indie film, made for just over $300,000, end up redefining horror for, well, generations? Let's get into it and figure out how this low-budget nightmare became a phenomenon that, honestly, is just unkillable.
All right, so to really get just how big of a deal Halloween was, we have to kind of rewind the clock and look at what the horror landscape was like back in 1978.
I mean, look, the 70s already had some heavy hitters, right? You had these movies that were all about psychological dread or just, raw, gritty terror. But what Halloween did, it was genius. It took all those ideas, mixed them together, and cooked up this perfect, terrifying formula. A formula that, as we'll see, could be used again and again.
And the story itself, it's so simple, it's brilliant. There's no complicated origin story, no deep, twisted motive. It's just evil. Pure evil, which they called the shape, showing up in the one place you're supposed to feel totally safe, a quiet, leafy suburb. It really gets at that primal fear, The boogeyman isn't in some haunted castle. He's right outside your window.
And right at the heart of it all, we get these two characters who would become legendary archetypes. You've got Laurie Strode, she's the smart, observant one, our hero, and then you have Michael Myers. He's silent, he's relentless, and you have no idea what's going on behind that mask. It's not just good versus evil, it's humanity versus this unstoppable force of nature.
Okay, now here's where things get really interesting, because the film's biggest problem, the fact that they had almost no money, actually ended up being its secret weapon.
Get this, the whole movie was made for just $325,000. I mean, to put that into perspective, today, that's like the catering budget for a big Hollywood movie. It's nothing. And what did it do at the box office? It brought in a staggering $70 million worldwide. For an indie film back then, that was just unheard of. Absolutely insane.
And this sent a huge message to Hollywood. It basically screamed, hey, you don't need big-name actors or fancy sets or crazy special effects. All you really needed was pure, nail-biting suspense. Turns out that was not only scarier, but it made a lot more money.
And that whole make-it-work philosophy, it gave us the most iconic part of the movie, Michael's mask. They had zero money to design one from scratch. So what did they do? The production designer went to a costume shop, bought a $2 Captain Kirk mask. Yes, that Captain Kirk. And with a little paint and some tweaking, turned it into one of the most terrifying faces in cinema history.
And that kind of clever thinking was just everywhere. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis's entire wardrobe, they bought it for under $100 at JCPenney. They were filming in sunny California, so they had to literally paint bags of dead leaves and reuse them to make it look like an Illinois autumn. The entire movie was shot in just 20 days. The whole thing was a masterclass in being creative when you've got no cash.
So, director John Carpenter makes this critical decision, and it's part genius, part just not having any money. He decided the fear wasn't going to come from a bunch of blood and gore. No, it was going to come from what you couldn't see. He was all about building this heavy, suffocating atmosphere and suspense that just never lets up.
And the way he did it with the camera was amazing. He used this new thing at the time called a Steadicam to give us Michael's point of view. It makes the camera glide and float, like a predator. So you, the audience, feel like you're the one looking through his eyes, stalking these characters. It is so unsettling and just a brilliant move.
But the one thing that tied it all together was the music. You're not going to believe this, but they showed an early version of the movie to a studio exec, and he told them it wasn't scary at all. So John Carpenter, who's also a composer, went home and in just 3 days wrote that iconic, terrifying piano theme. He didn't just add music to the movie, he basically injected it with pure fear.
So here's the real takeaway. Halloween did more than just scare audiences. It literally wrote the rulebook for a whole new kind of horror movie. It was basically a how-to guide for the slasher genre.
And it all kicks off with Laurie Strode. She is the final girl. You know the type, right? While her friends are goofing off, she's the one who senses something is wrong. She's smart, she's resourceful, and she doesn't just scream and die. She fights back. That character type, Halloween pretty much invented it, and it defined horror for the next 20 years.
And you can really see the whole formula laid out right here. You've got the silent masked killer, the tough final girl, those creepy shots from the killer's perspective. setting it on a holiday to make it extra scary. And of course, that theme song that tells you danger is coming. This is the blueprint, people. This is what gave us Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and basically every slasher movie that came after.
It's funny, though, because when it first came out, critics were kind of split. Some just didn't get it, calling it morbid or empty. But fast forward to today, it's seen as a masterpiece. People finally realized this wasn't just a scary movie. It was a culturally significant piece of filmmaking. It even got a spot in the National Film Registry, which is a huge deal.
All right, so let's talk about the legacy, because this film's influence goes way, way beyond just the movie itself. Okay, so setting the movie on October 31st, that was a stroke of genius. It wasn't just a random date. They were tapping into all those ancient, creepy vibes associated with Halloween, this idea that the barrier between our world and the spirit world is thin. So the movie didn't just take place on Halloween, it completely intertwined itself with the holiday forever.
And man, its cultural footprint is just massive. It kicked off one of the most successful horror franchises ever. It's considered a masterpiece, and let's be real, that music is the official soundtrack of October. You literally cannot go into a haunted house without hearing those iconic notes.
But at the end of the day, the reason the film still gets under our skin comes down to one thing: Michael Myers himself. Just think about that quote from his doctor, Dr. Loomis. He's basically saying this isn't a man. You can't talk to him, you can't reason with him. He's just evil. Pure, random, unstoppable evil in a human shape.
So why are we still scared of the shape all these years later? I think this is the key. The fear sticks with us because Michael Myers isn't just a killer. He's a symbol of something deeply unsettling, the idea that there's evil in the world that has no reason, no motive, and no off switch. And as that final shot of the movie shows us, you can't kill it. He is and always will be the boogeyman.